Hi, welcome back to BoxPred. Let's talk some boxing. Today I'm going to talk about the upcoming fight this weekend in the States. It sees Jonathan Banks going up against Seth Mitchell. And this fight is a rematch. And the thing about rematches, it's always interesting because it adds a new dynamic to the fight in many cases. And particularly I think in this case. Because, you know, we had a guy, Seth Mitchell, who was knocking guys out left, right and centre, an unbeaten prospective heavyweight in the US, coming up against a good, solid heavyweight in Jonathan Banks. And he got stopped in the second round. He was down 3 times. And Banks won the day. So, the difficulty with this fight is in determining how Seth Mitchell will look, how he'll come in, how he will recover and respond in this rematch. That is the unknown, and I certainly won't be betting on this fight. I think that it's there's too much of a big question mark over this fight, and that is, how does Seth Mitchell come into this fight? How does he respond? How does he bounce back? And even if he does bounce back in a strong manner, does that really change things? I think that this is one of those fights where there's too many questions that are unanswered, and it would really be guesswork to make any sort of prediction on how I really think that Mitchell would look. I'm going to go for Jonathan Banks to win this fight. I'm going to go for another stoppage, but a bit later. Perhaps say around between round 6 and 8. But like I say, it is a bit of guesswork, because for me this fight is quite a wide open question. And you know, what do you do when you've got a rematch? Well, quite the obvious thing really is to look at the first match. You know, what can we take from that first fight that can, you know, help us, guide us in a way to see, you know, what we think is going to happen. You know, because I'm still here, I'm saying there's a question mark, but I'm still here looking to try and give my opinion on what I think is going to happen. So what happened in that first fight? The first round, you know, how did it go for both fighters? Well, in many respects, and I believe the commentators during the fight stated that Seth Mitchell won the round. He won the first round. And there's a good argument for that. You know, he probably put a lot of pressure on Banks and he got quite a lot of punches off. If you look at the CompuBox stats, he threw a lot more punches and landed more punches than Jonathan Banks. But, in my opinion, I still feel that seeds were sown by Jonathan Banks, even in that first round, that led up to what happened in the second. You know, this is a guy, Jonathan Banks, who he was very close to Emmanuel Stewart, part of his team. And Stewart had recently passed away when this fight occurred. I have heard it said that you know, that really spurred him on for the first fight, and that won't be the case for this fight. And that you know, people have been saying they think Mitchell takes this one because of that. I don't buy that. I think that Banks is you know, experienced enough. He's a trainer himself. He knows his boxing. He's got, you know, he's worked with Emmanuel Stewart. Got a lot of knowledge passed on to him. You know, about boxing, and he knows the game. So, you know, this is a guy who I think it's not necessarily because Stewart was you know, just passed away which spurred him on. It probably did in a way, but I don't think that was the only reason. I think, you know, we're looking at a guy in Jonathan Banks who has only ever lost one fight, and that was a stoppage loss to Thomas Adamek. You know, another guy who has been in and around the top of the scene for years now. You know, so we're talking about a very strong competitor, very good boxer in Jonathan Banks. If you look at what happened in the second round, we saw, in my eyes, a mirror, the first knockdown, a mirror of some things that happened in the first round. Seth Mitchell, you know, we know he likes to knock guys out. He likes to pressure guys. He's been getting a lot of success there. But he's quite wild. He leaves himself open. He swings wild, you know. Sometimes he'll throw the right hand and he'll sort of come over with a duck in motion. That's not good when you're up against an experienced guy like Jonathan Banks who knows how to counterpunch. Okay? Banks is the better mover. Okay? He's light on his feet. I think both guys have got jabs. I don't think one is necessarily better than the other. I think Mitchell landed a few good jabs during the fight while it lasted. I think both guys have got jabs, but I think that what happened was Banks was sizing Mitchell up, and Mitchell took that first round probably because Banks was sort of sizing him up and taking his time. We heard the corner of Banks say between the rounds, "We're not giving rounds away. We want you to, let your punches go. We're not giving rounds away. We don't want to give this guy rounds." But Banks would have known, I know what this guy's doing now. And in the second round, after a couple more, bit of sussing out, he waited for his opportunity. And again, Mitchell went in wild, left himself open, and Jonathan Banks was able to counterpunch him rather swiftly. And he caught Seth Mitchell, and from then on, it was basically Banks just had to jump on Mitchell and close the show, finish the job. Mitchell, I think he's probably the most emotional boxer there is in the world today. He just looks like such an emotional guy. He looks like he's about to cry all the time. That's one thing I see with Seth Mitchell. I don't know if that's a weakness, because I think boxers, it's not good to get too emotional. I think you've got to keep a level head. And I think that's what I'm saying. How does Mitchell bounce back? With Mitchell, I really would like to see his corner tell him, be a bit more cautious, be a bit more patient. Don't go for the kill. In the first fight, because he's been knocking these guys out and he isn't beaten, maybe he's thinking, I'm going to take this guy out. I'm going to continue doing what I've been doing to every other guy. And he came up against a guy who he just couldn't pin down. And yes, Banks was clinching quite a lot in that first round because, like I said, he's a knowledgeable boxer. He knows what to do. He can clinch. He can reset. So he's stopping Seth Mitchell getting his punches off inside by clinching. That's a notable thing which Banks was able to do. But I would be inclined to tell Mitchell in the second fight, listen, your jab wasn't too bad in that first round of that last fight. You were getting some success with the jab. Okay, Banks was getting success with the jab as well, but you were still remaining competitive. If you can set up your punches with the jab and you're not so wild when you're going in, wait for the opportunity, set up the punch, you can win rounds. Don't go looking for the KO is basically the message I would give to Seth Mitchell in this fight. Be patient, work off the jab. Let's try and improve your boxing game now, because it was working what you were doing, but it's clearly not going to work against the elite. Because, that's been proven by this last fight. When you come up against a guy who can move and he can box a bit and he can counterpunch you, he's going to take, you're going to walk right into his hands. So, I think Banks knows what he's looking for now. From that first fight, he's the type of guy who can work things out, and he's quite a good, he strikes me as a bit of a clever boxer, Banks. He knows now the sort of dynamics of the fight, what Mitchell was doing. The best way for Mitchell to throw a cat amongst pigeons, so to speak, is to work more off the jab, be more patient, don't be coming in early on. Make Banks think. Don't give Banks those openings again. Don't show him you're thinking about this more. Show him that make him take a bit more initiative rather than you just forcing the fight. That's the downfall that Mitchell will have. Put it this way, if you see Mitchell come out in the first round trying to force this fight and get a stoppage, either he's going to catch Banks and he's going to stop him, or he's going to get stopped early himself again. Because that's not the way to go about this fight. Banks is a good mover. He's good at slipping away from punches. He's good at clinching. He's good at defence. And if you're not very accurate, as Mitchell is not really accurate, then you're going to have to, you're going to be looking for Banks to do the same thing again. Because he's going to take a step back as Mitchell lunges in, and he's going to counterpunch him, and it's going to be lights out again. Okay, that's what you're going to be looking for early in this fight. If Mitchell's more patient, if he's using the jab, if he's being a bit more patient, trying to set up his punches, trying to sort of suss out Banks, trying to take more time, not going in wild, then we got a different fight on our hands. Then we see, what can Banks do then? How does Banks respond? Then it adds a new dynamic to the fight. It brings this into this. Then we're going to see, a real boxing match. Then we're going to see, maybe a new Seth Mitchell who's kind of added a little bit more to his game, a little bit less one-dimensional, a little bit more tricky for Banks to suss out. But my inkling would be that even if this happens, we still have a guy in Banks who can be patient himself, and he will just probably go through the motions, and then he will eventually draw Mitchell in. I don't think you can change from one fight to the next. It takes longer than that, really. And you have these guys who are used to knocking guys out. He's used to being aggressive. I think you'll revert to type. And as the fight goes on, I'm just going to say that I think that Banks will end up, counter-punching him again and catching him, and then we'll see the same story. Both of these guys have got power. Banks has got power. He's got 60-odd% hero ratio. We know Seth Mitchell's got power. Very interesting fight. I know this video's been a bit all over the place. I've jumped from one thing to the next. I haven't really, done this chronologically or in order. But I want to get a few points out there because I have all these thoughts running through my mind with this fight, and that's what makes it interesting. Is, what Seth Mitchell do we see, and therefore how does Banks respond? If we see an aggressive Mitchell, expect the same as last time. If we see a Mitchell who's a little bit more patient, then we got an interesting fight, starting to develop. Then we see, okay, maybe this guy's gone back and reworked things. Maybe he's got a point here. Maybe he's got a point to prove. Maybe he's taking this, with a bit of knowledge on, a bit of head on his shoulders, and maybe Seth Mitchell would definitely then have a chance of picking up rounds, taking rounds, and going late into the fight, possibly breaking down Banks and looking for the stoppage himself if he's patient. But I'm picking Banks by round 6 to 8 stoppage. Let me know what you guys think about this fight, because as always I like to hear your views, and I want to see what you think about the fight, and hear the different views about it. As I've said, there's lots of question marks, so there's different takes on how you think it's going to go. What have you seen or heard which I haven't, which you think changes your mind? How do you think the fight's going to develop? So, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your opinions. This is Boxbred, and I'm out.